Picture this, a thriving city, bustling with life, where people trade, build, and dream of the future. Then one day, it's gone. Not just abandoned, vanished, as if swallowed by the earth itself. No warning, no explanation, just silence. This isn't fiction. Across the globe, ancient cities have disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only ruins and riddles. For centuries, historians and archaeologists have scratched their heads, piecing together fragments of the past, yet the truth remains elusive. What happened to these lost civilizations? Was it disaster, war, or something even more mysterious? In this video, we'll uncover 50 of history's most baffling vanishing acts, cities that once stood proud, now reduced to whispers in the wind. From the legendary Atlantis to the eerie ruins of Tikal, each story is a puzzle waiting to be solved. So stay with us, because by the end, you'll question everything you thought you knew about the rise and fall of civilizations. The past is hiding secrets, let's find them. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most enduring mysteries of all time, the lost city of Atlantis. First described by the ancient philosopher Plato, Atlantis was said to be a powerful and technologically advanced civilization, thriving on an island beyond the Pillars of Hercules. According to legend, its people possessed knowledge and wealth far beyond their time, with grand architecture and a society that seemed almost utopian. But then, in a single day and night of catastrophe, Atlantis vanished beneath the waves, lost to the sea forever. Theories about its disappearance are as varied as they are fascinating. Some believe a massive earthquake or volcanic eruption sank the island, while others point to a tsunami wiping it off the map. There are even those who argue that divine punishment, perhaps for the Atlanteans' arrogance, sealed their fate. Over the centuries, explorers and researchers have searched for Atlantis in places like the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and even Antarctica, but no definitive evidence has ever been found. Could Atlantis have been real, or was it merely a cautionary tale invented by Plato? The debate continues, fueling books, documentaries, and expeditions. What makes this legend so compelling is the idea that an entire civilization, once so mighty, could simply disappear without a trace. Whether myth or lost history, Atlantis remains one of history's greatest enigmas, a ghost of the ancient world that still haunts our imagination. And speaking of vanished wonders, our next stop takes us deep into the jungles of Central America, where another great city met a mysterious end, but that's a story for later. For now, let's keep unraveling the secrets of the past, one vanished city at a time. Now, let's journey from the sunken legends of Atlantis to the overgrown ruins of Tikal, a once thriving Maya metropolis hidden deep in the jungles of Guatemala. Unlike Atlantis, Tikal's existence is undeniable. Its towering pyramids and sprawling plazas still stand as silent witnesses to a civilization at its peak. At its height, Tikal was a powerhouse of trade, politics, and culture, home to tens of thousands of people. But by the end of the 9th century, this bustling city was eerily empty, its grand temples reclaimed by the forest. So what happened? Archaeologists have pieced together clues pointing to a perfect storm of crises. One leading theory is prolonged drought. Tree ring studies reveal severe dry spells that would have devastated crops and water supplies. Imagine a city built on maize, suddenly unable to feed its people. Then there's the evidence of warfare. Carvings and defensive walls suggest escalating conflicts with rival cities like Calakmul, draining resources and destabilizing society. Some researchers argue it was a combination: drought fueling unrest, unrest weakening the city, until the social fabric unraveled entirely. Yet mysteries linger. Why did neighboring cities survive while Tikal fell? Were there other factors like disease or a breakdown in leadership? The jungle has kept many secrets, but recent LiDAR scans have uncovered hidden structures, hinting at even more complexity. Tikal's abandonment wasn't just a disappearance, it was a slow fade. a cautionary tale about how even the greatest civilizations can crumble under pressure. And as we leave the whispers of Tikal behind, another ancient wonder awaits, a city not lost to nature but buried by disaster. But that's a story for next time. For now, the enigma of Tikal reminds us that history's greatest lessons often lie in its silent ruins. Now, let's travel from the jungles of Central America to the arid plains of modern-day Pakistan, where another ancient marvel once thrived, Mohenjo-Daro, the jewel of the Indus Valley civilization. Flourishing over 4,000 years ago, this city was a masterpiece of urban planning with grid-like streets, advanced drainage systems, and even multi-story buildings. Yet by around 1900 BC, its streets fell silent, its wells dried up, and its people vanished. What caused this sophisticated city to collapse? One compelling theory points to climate change. Geological evidence suggests the once reliable Indus River may have shifted course or dried up, crippling agriculture and trade. Without water, even the most brilliant engineering couldn't save the city. Then there's the controversial Aryan invasion hypothesis. Some scholars argue that nomadic warriors from the north overran the region, though scant physical evidence leaves this theory hotly debated. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is a sudden catastrophe. Excavations reveal layers of ash and skeletal remains in chaotic positions, sparking theories of a violent flood or even an ancient nuclear event, though the latter leans more into myth than science. The truth is, Mohenjo-Daro's demise likely wasn't a single disaster but a slow unraveling, a combination of environmental stress and social upheaval. Yet, unlike Tikal's gradual abandonment, Mohenjo-Daro's end feels abrupt, as if frozen in time. Its mysteries endure, from the undeciphered script to the eerie absence of grand temples or palaces. Was it a peaceful society that succumbed to nature's whims, or did conflict play a darker role? As archaeologists sift through the ruins, one thing is clear: Mohenjo-Daro's silence speaks volumes about the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations. And as we turn the page on this enigmatic city, our next stop takes us to a desert kingdom whose grandeur was carved not from stone, but from the very cliffs themselves. But that's a tale for another moment. For now, Mohenjo-Daro stands as a stark reminder that progress is no shield against the forces of time. Now, let's journey from the dusty ruins of Mohenjo-Daro to the rose-red cliffs of Jordan, where the ancient city of Petra once thrived. Carved directly into the sandstone mountains, Petra was the dazzling capital of the Nabatean kingdom, a civilization that mastered the art of survival in the harsh desert. With its intricate water channels, towering temples, and bustling markets, Petra was a crossroads of culture and commerce, linking trade routes from Arabia to the Mediterranean. Yet by the 7th century, this wonder of the ancient world had slipped into obscurity, its grand facades left to the whispers of the wind. So, what led to Petra's decline? The most widely accepted theory points to the shifting tides of trade. As the Roman Empire expanded its maritime routes, overland caravans, Petra's lifeblood began to dwindle. Without the wealth from spices, silks, and incense passing through its gates, the city's economy faltered. Then came the earthquakes. In the year 363, a massive quake shattered Petra's infrastructure, toppling buildings and crippling its water systems. Another quake in the year 551 delivered the final blow, leaving the city vulnerable and depopulated. But Petra's story isn't just one of ruin. Unlike Mohenjo-Daro's abrupt collapse, Petra faded slowly, its people adapting or migrating as its glory waned. By the time the Crusaders arrived in the 12th century, Petra was little more than a legend, its true identity lost to time until a Swiss explorer rediscovered it in 1812. Today, its haunting beauty endures, a testament to the Nabateans' ingenuity and a reminder that even the mightiest cities are at the mercy of geography and chance. As we leave Petra's echoing canyons behind, our next mystery takes us to a city frozen in ash, where an entire population met its end in a single, catastrophic day. But that's a story for another moment. For now, Petra stands as a monument to resilience, its ruins whispering of a time when the desert bloomed with life. From the slow fate of Petra, we now turn to a city whose end came not with a whisper but a cataclysmic roar. Pompeii's story is one of sudden, unimaginable destruction, a thriving Roman hub frozen in a single, terrifying moment. Nestled near the Bay of Naples, this wealthy port city was a playground for the elite, its streets lined with villas, theaters, and bustling markets. Life here pulsed with energy until Mount Vesuvius rewrote its fate in the year 79. The eruption began with a warning. Days before the catastrophe, tremors shook the region, but the people of Pompeii, accustomed to minor quakes, paid little heed. Then, on what seemed an ordinary August afternoon, Vesuvius exploded with a force beyond comprehension. A towering column of ash and pumice surged 12 miles into the sky, blotting out the sun. For hours, the city was pummeled by falling debris, roofs collapsing under the weight. Some fled, but many remained, unaware of the horror to come. Then the pyroclastic surge, a superheated wave of gas and rock, racing downhill at 100 miles per hour, sealed Pompeii's doom. In mere moments, thousands perished, their bodies encased in ash, preserved in eerie detail for centuries. What makes Pompeii unique among vanished cities isn't just its tragedy, but its preservation. The very disaster that destroyed it also captured its essence: bread left in ovens, frescoes still vibrant, even the poignant shapes of families huddled together. When excavations began in the 18th century, archaeologists uncovered a time capsule of Roman life, offering insights no history book could match. Yet mysteries linger. Why did so many stay despite the warnings? Did some survive beyond the ruins? As we reflect on Pompeii's fate, we're reminded of nature's indiscriminate power. Unlike Petra's slow decline or Mohenjo-Daro's enigmatic end, Pompeii's story is a stark lesson in human vulnerability. But our journey through history's lost cities isn't over yet. Next, we'll dive beneath the waves to a sunken metropolis whose riches once rivaled Pompeii's, the legendary Heracleion. Shifting from Pompeii's fiery end, we now descend into the depths of the Mediterranean, where the sea guards secrets of a once great city. Heracleion, known to the ancient Egyptians as Knossos, was a legendary port that vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind only whispers of its glory. For centuries, its existence was debated. Was it myth or reality? Then, in the year 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio made a discovery that stunned the world: the ruins of Heracleion, hidden under 30 feet of water near the Nile Delta. This wasn't just any city. Heracleion was the gateway between Egypt and the Mediterranean, a hub of trade and culture where Greek merchants rubbed shoulders with Egyptian priests. Towering statues of pharaohs lined its harbors, temples overflowed with gold, and ships from across the ancient world docked in its bustling ports. Yet by the 8th century, it was gone, swallowed by the sea. What could have toppled such a powerhouse? The leading theory points to nature's slow but relentless forces. Heracleion was built on unstable sediment, and over time, rising sea levels, coupled with the weight of its grand structures, may have caused the land to liquefy during an earthquake. Imagine the ground literally turning to soup beneath the city's feet, dragging temples and statues into the abyss. Others suggest a massive tsunami, like the one that devastated Alexandria in 365, could have delivered the final blow. But here's the twist: unlike Pompeii's sudden burial, Heracleion's sinking likely unfolded over decades, giving its people time to flee, yet no records explain where they went. Today, Heracleion's artifacts tell its story. Gaudio's team has recovered colossal statues, inscribed steels, and even gold coins, all remarkably preserved by the sea's embrace. These finds reveal a city steeped in ritual, where Egyptian and Greek cultures merged seamlessly, but mysteries remain. why did later historians barely mention its fate? And could other sunken cities lie nearby, waiting to be found? As we resurface from Heracleion's watery grave, we're left to ponder how even the mightiest civilizations can be humbled by nature. Next, we'll journey to the sands of Mesopotamia, where the once mighty city of rose and fell under the weight of empires and environmental strife. Now, let's turn our gaze from the sunken ruins of Heracleion to the windswept sands of Mesopotamia, where another ancient giant met its downfall. The city of once the beating heart of the Sumerian civilization, stood as a testament to human achievement only to crumble under the weight of time and turmoil. Wasn't just a city, it was a marvel of its age. Imagine towering ziggurats reaching for the heavens, bustling markets filled with goods from distant lands, and a society that gave the world some of its earliest written laws. At its peak, was the crown jewel of Mesopotamia, a cultural and political powerhouse under rulers like King Namu. But by the 21st century before the Common Era, this glittering metropolis lay in ruins. What brought about its collapse? The first culprit was the land itself. Thrived on the fertile banks of the Euphrates, but over centuries, the very agriculture that sustained it sowed the seeds of its demise. Irrigation, the lifeblood of Sumerian farming, slowly poisoned the soil with salt, turning once lush fields into barren wastelands. Crop yields plummeted and famine crept in. Yet environmental decay alone didn't seal Ur's fate. Enter the invaders. Nomadic tribes like the Elamites saw Ur's weakening grip as an opportunity. In 2004, before the Common Era, they struck, sacking the city and dragging its last king, Ibbi-Sin, into captivity. The fall was brutal, but here's the twist: didn't vanish overnight. It limped on for centuries, a shadow of its former self, as power shifted to Babylon and other rising cities. Even its great ziggurat, though stripped of glory, remained a haunting symbol of what had been. Archaeologists have pieced together Ur's story through clay tablets, royal tombs, and the ruins of its grand structures. These relics whisper of a society that mastered astronomy, law, and art, yet couldn't outrun the twin specters of ecological disaster and human conflict. Unlike Heracleion's watery grave, Ur's end was a slow unraveling, a cautionary tale of how even the mightiest civilizations can be undone by their own success. As we leave the dust of behind, we're reminded that the past rarely falls quietly. Next, we'll venture into the jungles of Cambodia, where the sprawling city of Angkor faced its own battle against nature's relentless march. Leaving the sun-baked ruins of behind, we now journey to the steamy jungles of Southeast Asia, where an even grander metropolis once thrived and then mysteriously faded. The Khmer city of Angkor wasn't just a city, it was an empire carved in stone, a labyrinth of temples and canals that dazzled the ancient world. At its height, Angkor was home to nearly 1 million people, making it the largest pre-industrial city on Earth. Yet by the 15th century, this sprawling wonder was all but abandoned, swallowed by the forest. What went wrong? The first cracks in Angkor's foundation were literal. The city's lifeblood was its intricate water system, a network of reservoirs, canals, and moats designed to tame the monsoon rains. But here's the irony: the very engineering that sustained Angkor may have doomed it. As the population ballooned, the Khmer pushed their water management to the brink. Canals silted up, reservoirs grew stagnant, and when the rains faltered during prolonged droughts, the system collapsed. Tree rings from the region tell a grim story. The 14th century brought some of the worst dry spells in centuries, turning Angkor's hydraulic marvel into a death trap. Yet climate alone didn't erase Angkor. The city's sheer size became its Achilles heel. Overpopulation strained resources, while the elite's obsession with monumental projects like the ever-expanding Temple of Angkor Wat drained labor and diverted attention from critical maintenance. Meanwhile, rivals circled. The rising power of Ayutthaya, a Thai kingdom to the west, launched devastating raids, sacking Angkor in 1431. Unlike Ur's slow decline, Angkor's fall was a cocktail of crises: environmental, political, and social, all bubbling over at once. But here's the twist: Angkor never truly vanished. While the elite fled to new capitals near modern-day Phnom Penh, locals kept living among the ruins, tending rice paddies in the shadow of crumbling temples. Even the jungle's reclaiming grip couldn't erase Angkor's legacy. Today, archaeologists use laser scans to peel back the forest canopy, revealing a city far vaster than anyone imagined, a reminder that even the mightiest empires are at nature's mercy. As we step away from Angkor's moss-covered stones, our next stop takes us to the Mediterranean, where the volcanic fury of Thera wiped an entire civilization off the map in an instant. From the crumbling temples of Angkor, we now sail westward to the shimmering shores of Crete, where another great civilization met a dramatic and mysterious end. The Minoan city of Knossos was the dazzling heart of Bronze Age Crete, a place of labyrinthine palaces, vibrant frescoes, and a culture so advanced it inspired the legend of the Minotaur. Yet around 1450 BC, this thriving metropolis suddenly collapsed, leaving behind tantalizing clues and unanswered questions. The first suspect in Knossos' downfall is nature's fury. Just 70 miles north, the volcanic island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, erupted with cataclysmic force. This wasn't just any eruption. It was one of the largest in recorded history, sending tsunamis crashing into Crete's coasts and blanketing Knossos in ash. The Minoans' seafaring trade networks, their lifeblood, were shattered overnight. But while the eruption weakened Knossos, it didn't deliver the final blow. The city limped on for decades, clinging to survival. Enter the Mycenaeans, warlike rivals from mainland Greece. As Knossos reeled from natural disasters, these opportunistic invaders saw their chance. Evidence suggests they stormed the city, burning palaces and seizing control. The Minoans' elegant, art-filled world gave way to the Mycenaeans' martial culture, a stark shift visible in Knossos' later layers, where graceful frescoes are replaced by scenes of battle. Yet even this explanation isn't tidy. Some scholars argue the Mycenaeans didn't conquer Knossos but moved in peacefully after its decline, filling a power vacuum. Others point to internal strife, perhaps revolts by an overtaxed lower class. What's certain is that by the 12th century BCE, Knossos was a shadow of itself, its grand palaces repurposed or abandoned. The story of Knossos is a reminder that collapses rarely have a single cause. A perfect storm of disasters, volcanic, political, and social, erased a civilization that once ruled the Aegean. But like Angkor, Knossos never fully disappeared. Its legends endured, and its ruins, rediscovered in the early 20th century, still whisper secrets of a world lost to time. Now, let's turn to another enigmatic vanishing act, this time in the jungles of Mesoamerica, where the Olmec city of Venta met its own puzzling fate. Deep in the steamy jungles of modern-day Mexico, another ancient marvel silently slipped into obscurity. The Olmec city of Venta, once the glittering crown of Mesoamerica's first major civilization, thrived for centuries before vanishing under mysterious circumstances. Known for its colossal stone heads and sophisticated urban planning, Venta was a hub of trade, religion, and innovation until it wasn't. One leading theory points to environmental chaos. Around the time of Venta's decline, volcanic eruptions rocked the region, spewing ash that could have choked crops and disrupted water sources. Imagine entire fields withering under a gray sky, or rivers clogged with debris, leaving a city that depended on agriculture desperate and vulnerable. Some archaeologists even suggest earthquakes may have toppled Venta's monumental structures, shaking the people's faith in their leaders and gods. But nature might not have acted alone. Signs of deliberate destruction toppled altars, defaced monuments hint at possible revolts or invasions. The Olmec elite, who ruled from Venta's ceremonial center, could have faced rebellion from an oppressed underclass or attacks by rival groups. It's a pattern we've seen before, a society strained by inequality or external pressure, finally snapping under the weight of its own tensions. Then there's the mystery of the missing people. Unlike Pompeii, where victims were frozen in ash, Venta's abandonment appears orderly. Artifacts were removed, key structures buried, almost as if the Olmecs planned their exit. Did they relocate en masse, seeking greener pastures, or did they scatter, their culture dissolving into the rising Maya and Aztec civilizations that followed? Venta's story is a puzzle with missing pieces. Was it volcanoes, unrest, or something we haven't even considered? What's clear is that this pioneering city didn't just collapse, it faded, leaving behind those haunting stone faces as silent witnesses to a lost world. Now let's journey from Mesoamerica's jungles to the windswept plains of Anatolia, where the Hittite capital of Hattusa met a far more abrupt and violent end. Shifting our gaze from the jungles of Mesoamerica to the sun-baked hills of western Turkey, we arrive at one of history's most legendary vanishing acts, the ancient city of Troy. This is a story where myth and reality collide, where the echoes of Homer's epic poems mingle with the trowels of archaeologists. Troy wasn't just a city, it was a symbol, a battleground, and a mystery wrapped in layers of legend and rubble. For centuries, scholars debated whether Troy was real or pure fiction until the late 19th century, when a determined German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann unearthed its remains. What he found was astonishing. Not one Troy, but multiple cities stacked like a cake, each built atop the ruins of the last. The Troy of the Trojan War, if it existed, was just one layer in this archaeological lasagna. So what happened to this fabled city? The most famous theory, of course, is the Trojan War itself. According to Homer, Troy fell after a decade-long siege, thanks to a cunning wooden horse and the wrath of the Greeks. But while the horse might be myth, evidence suggests Troy did face violent destruction around 1200 BCE. Burned buildings, scattered arrowheads, and collapsed walls hint at a catastrophic attack, perhaps by Mycenaean Greeks, just as the legends suggest. Yet war may not have been the only culprit. Earthquakes left their mark on Troy's layers too, shaking foundations and toppling towers. Some archaeologists believe natural disasters weakened the city long before any army arrived, making it ripe for conquest. Others point to shifting trade routes, which could have starved Troy of its wealth and influence. A city that once controlled the lucrative straits between the Aegean and Black Seas might have simply faded into irrelevance. Then there's the puzzle of the survivors. Unlike Venta's orderly departure, Troy's end seems abrupt, but its legacy wasn't erased. The name lived on in Greek and Roman lore, its story retold for generations. Even today, the phrase Trojan horse warns us of hidden dangers, proving that some cities never truly vanish. They just transform into something immortal. Was Troy destroyed by war, earthquakes, or economic collapse? Or was it a combination of all three, with myth amplifying the truth? The answer might lie buried in those layered ruins, waiting for the next trowel to uncover it. Now let's turn our attention to another Bronze Age powerhouse, the Hittite capital of Hattusa, where the stakes were just as high and the end just as sudden. Leaving behind the legendary ruins of Troy, we journeyed deeper into the heart of Anatolia, where another mighty city met a dramatic and mysterious end, the Hittite capital of Hattusa. This was no ordinary settlement. At its peak, Hattusa stood as the nerve center of an empire that rivaled Egypt and Babylon, a fortress city carved into the rugged landscape, its massive stone walls whispering tales of power and sudden collapse. The Hittites were masters of diplomacy and war, their influence stretching across the ancient Near East. Yet around 1200 BCE, their grand capital was abandoned, its gates left open, its temples silent. What could bring down such a formidable city? The clues point to a storm of chaos both from outside and within. One leading theory points to the so-called Sea Peoples, a shadowy coalition of raiders who swept through the Mediterranean like a wildfire, toppling kingdoms in their wake. Could these marauders have breached Hattusa's legendary defenses? Some archaeologists point to layers of ash and scorched bricks, suggesting the city was sacked and burned. But here's the twist: there's no clear evidence of a prolonged siege. The destruction seems almost rushed. That's where the second theory comes in: internal rebellion. The Hittite Empire was a patchwork of vassal states and rival factions. If loyalty frayed, if local leaders turned against the crown, the empire could have crumbled from within. Imagine a palace coup or a provincial revolt, leaving Hattusa vulnerable to its enemies. Then there's the wild card: climate change. Tree rings and sediment cores reveal that the late Bronze Age was a time of severe droughts and crop failures. A starving population, a weakened army, a desperate nobility — any of these could have tipped the scales toward collapse. Yet Hattusa's story doesn't end in total oblivion. Centuries later, the Romans built a temple atop its ruins, unknowingly standing on the bones of a forgotten superpower. Today, the city's towering lion gate and cryptic hieroglyphs remind us that even the mightiest empires can vanish, leaving behind riddles etched in stone. Was it invaders, rebellion, or a changing world that doomed Hattusa? The truth may lie buried in those silent ruins, waiting for the next clue to surface. Now, let's travel south to the sands of Africa, where another great city, Axum, faced its own enigmatic decline. From the windswept ruins of Hattusa, we now cross continents to the highlands of East Africa, where the once thriving city of Axum tells a different kind of vanishing story. This wasn't a sudden collapse, but a slow fading, like a candle burning down to its last flicker. At its height, Axum was the heartbeat of a trading empire that stretched from the Nile to the Arabian Peninsula, its towering obelisks and grand palaces a testament to its wealth and ambition. Axum's prosperity was built on trade. Ivory, gold, and frankincense flowed through its markets, connecting Africa to the Mediterranean and beyond. But by the 7th century, the city's influence began to wane. One key factor: the rise of Islam. As Arab traders forged new routes across the Red Sea, Axum's monopoly on commerce crumbled. The old networks that had fueled its wealth were bypassed, leaving the city economically isolated. Then came the silent killer: climate change. Soil samples and ancient pollen records reveal a troubling shift. The land around Axum grew drier, its once fertile fields turning to dust. Crops failed, and the population dwindled as people migrated in search of greener pastures. Without food or trade, the city's power unraveled. But here's the twist: Axum never truly disappeared. Unlike other vanished cities, it transformed. The seat of political power moved, but the legacy endured. Today, its stelae still pierce the sky, and the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion claims to house the Ark of the Covenant, a thread connecting past to present. So was it economics, environment, or simply the tides of history that reshaped Axum? Perhaps all three. What remains is a city that didn't so much vanish as step quietly into the shadows, its story etched not in ruins but in the living traditions of Ethiopia. Next, we leap across the Atlantic to the Mississippi Valley, where the sprawling earthworks of Cahokia hold their own secrets of disappearance. Now, let's journey to the banks of the Mississippi River, where the towering mounds of Cahokia stand as silent witnesses to one of North America's most puzzling disappearances. At its peak around the year 1050, this sprawling city was home to tens of thousands, a bustling hub of trade, ceremony, and innovation, rivaling the great urban centers of Europe at the time. The sheer scale of its earthen pyramids, like the massive monk's mound, hints at a society with astonishing engineering skills and a complex social structure. Yet by the 14th century, Cahokia was all but empty. What happened? One leading theory points to environmental stress. Tree ring data suggests a series of brutal droughts gripped the region, crippling agriculture and straining resources. Imagine a city built on corn suddenly unable to feed its people. Chaos would follow. But drought alone doesn't tell the whole story. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of another possible culprit: societal collapse. Skeletons found in mass graves show signs of violent trauma, hinting at warfare or internal strife. Some researchers believe Cahokia's rapid growth may have been its undoing. As the population swelled, so did inequality, with a powerful elite controlling resources while others struggled. Resentment could have boiled over, fracturing the society from within. Then there's the mystery of the palisade, a massive wooden wall built around the city's core. Was it a defense against invaders or a barrier to keep desperate citizens out? Either way, it speaks to a community under siege, whether by outside forces or its own divisions. Unlike Axum's gradual fade, Cahokia's end feels abrupt. By the time European settlers arrived centuries later, the mounds were already overgrown, their builders long gone. No written records survived, only whispers in the oral traditions of descendant tribes. So was it nature, human conflict, or a toxic mix of both that emptied Cahokia? The mounds refused to give up all their secrets, leaving us to piece together clues from the soil and bones. Next, we'll cross the Mediterranean to the fiery fate of Carthage, where politics and vengeance wrote a very different ending. Now, let's turn our gaze to the shores of North Africa, where the once mighty city of Carthage met a fate as dramatic as it was devastating. Founded by the Phoenicians in the 9th century before the Common Era, Carthage grew into a maritime superpower, dominating trade across the Mediterranean with its formidable navy and bustling ports. Its wealth and influence were so vast that it became Rome's greatest rival, a rivalry that would ultimately seal its doom. The Punic Wars, a series of brutal conflicts between Carthage and Rome, stretched over more than a century, but it was the third and final war that spelled the end. In the year 146 before the Common Era, after a grueling 3-year siege, Roman forces broke through Carthage's defenses. What followed wasn't just defeat, it was annihilation. The city was razed to the ground, its buildings burned, and its surviving citizens sold into slavery. Legend claims the Romans even salted the earth to ensure nothing could grow again, though historians debate whether this was literal or symbolic. But Carthage's destruction wasn't just about military conquest, it was personal. Rome's hatred for Carthage ran deep, fueled by decades of conflict and the shadow of Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who had nearly toppled Rome itself. The phrase Carthago delenda isti, Carthage must be destroyed, became a rallying cry repeated in the Roman Senate until it was finally carried out. Yet myths linger, blurring the line between history and legend. Some say the Carthaginians, rather than surrender, chose mass suicide, locking themselves in their temple as flames engulfed it. Others whisper of curses, that Rome's brutality against Carthage brought about its own eventual decline. Even the city's ruins seemed haunted. When Rome later rebuilt Carthage as a colony, stories spread of restless spirits clinging to the land. Unlike Cahokia's mysterious fade, Carthage's end was deliberate, a spectacle of vengeance written into history. But like all vanished cities, it leaves us with questions. Was its destruction inevitable, or could diplomacy have saved it? And what might the Mediterranean world have looked like if Carthage had survived? Next, we'll venture to the Indus Valley, where the abandoned streets of Dolavera hold clues to another enigmatic collapse. Shifting our focus eastward, we arrive at the enigmatic ruins of Dolavera, one of the most sophisticated cities of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. Nestled in what is now modern-day India, Dolavera thrived for over 1,500 years, its people mastering urban planning, water management, and trade long before many other civilizations. Yet, like its sister cities, it vanished abruptly, leaving behind a puzzle that archaeologists are still piecing together. What makes Dolavera's disappearance so intriguing is its resilience. This was a city built to endure. Its inhabitants engineered an intricate system of reservoirs and canals to capture every drop of monsoon rain, turning a harsh, arid landscape into a livable one. But even the most advanced systems have limits. Around 3,900 years ago, the climate began to shift. the monsoons grew erratic, and the Gagha-Hakra River, D'Oliveira's lifeline, may have dried up or changed course. Without water, the city's agricultural backbone crumbled and famine likely followed. Trade collapse dealt another blow. D'Oliveira was a hub for materials like copper, shells, and semi-precious stones, connecting the Indus Valley to Mesopotamia and beyond. But as the broader civilization declined, trade routes disintegrated. Artifacts show that luxury goods stopped flowing and the city's economy withered. Some researchers suggest that the people of D'Oliveira may have migrated in search of water and opportunity, leaving their once great city to the sands. Unlike Carthage's fiery end, D'Oliveira's demise was slow, a gradual unraveling rather than a single catastrophe. Yet its ruins tell a haunting story. The city's final layers reveal shoddy construction, as if its people were clinging to survival even as their world faded. Today, D'Oliveira's silent streets and empty reservoirs stand as a testament to the fragility of even the most advanced societies when nature and fortune turn against them. So what finally sealed D'Oliveira's fate? Was it climate alone, or did internal strife accelerate its fall? And could its water-saving innovations have delayed the inevitable? Next, we'll journey to the deserts of Arabia, where the Nabatean city of Hegra faced its own battle against time and shifting sands. Now, let's turn our attention to another marvel of the ancient world, Hegra, the lesser-known sister city of Petra. Carved into the rose-red cliffs of Saudi Arabia's desert, Hegra was once a thriving Nabatean hub, bustling with traders and adorned with ornate tombs. But unlike Petra, which lingers in popular memory, Hegra slipped into obscurity, its story whispered only by the wind and sand. What makes Hegra's decline so fascinating is its connection to the ebb and flow of commerce. The Nabateans were masters of trade, their networks stretching from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Peninsula. Hegra, positioned along the incense route, thrived as a vital stop for caravans laden with frankincense, myrrh, and spices. Yet as Rome expanded its grip on the region, trade routes began to shift. The Romans favored sea routes and established new overland paths, bypassing Hegra entirely. Without the lifeblood of trade, the city's prosperity dwindled. Archaeological clues hint at a slow decline rather than a sudden collapse. Inscriptions and artifacts suggest that Hegra's population gradually shrank, its grand tombs left unfinished. Some residents may have migrated to more prosperous cities, while others clung to the fading oasis, adapting to a quieter life. By the time Islam rose in the 7th century, Hegra was already a ghost of its former self, its glory days buried under layers of sand and time. Yet Hegra's story isn't just one of loss. Its isolation preserved it. Unlike Petra, which faced centuries of looters and tourists, Hegra's remoteness kept its treasures intact. Today, its exquisitely carved facades, untouched for millennia, offer a pristine window into Nabatean artistry and ambition. So was Hegra's fate sealed by shifting trade routes alone, or did environmental pressures play a role? And what might its silent stones still teach us about the rise and fall of desert empires? Next, we'll venture to the crossroads of civilizations, where the ancient city of Palmyra faced conquests both ancient and modern. Shifting our gaze from the silent sands of Hegra, we arrive at the storied ruins of Palmyra, a city that once stood as a glittering jewel of the ancient world. Nestled in the heart of Syria's desert, Palmyra was more than just a trading hub. It was a cultural crossroads where East met West, blending Roman grandeur with Persian influence. Its towering colonnades, lavish temples, and bustling markets spoke of wealth and ambition, a testament to the ingenuity of its people. Palmyra's rise to prominence was no accident. Positioned along the Silk Road, it thrived as a vital link between the Roman Empire and the Parthian East. Caravans brought silk, spices, and precious stones, while Pomeran merchants grew rich and powerful. The city's unique identity emerged from this fusion. Its art, architecture, and even its rulers bore the marks of both worlds. Queen Zenobia, perhaps Palmyra's most famous figure, dared to challenge Rome itself, declaring independence and briefly carving out an empire of her own. But Palmyra's golden age was short-lived. In the 3rd century, Roman forces crushed Zenobia's revolt, sacking the city and dragging its queen in chains to Rome. Though it survived as a provincial outpost, its glory faded. Trade routes shifted, and Palmyra dwindled into a quiet desert town, its past greatness remembered only in the crumbling stones. Centuries later, tragedy struck again. In modern times, Palmyra became a casualty of war, its ancient treasures targeted and destroyed by extremists. The Temple of Bel, the Arch of Triumph, monuments that had endured for millennia were reduced to rubble in a matter of days. Yet even in ruin, Palmyra's legacy endures. Archaeologists and preservationists work tirelessly to restore what was lost, a reminder that the echoes of history can never truly be silenced. So what does Palmyra's story teach us? It's a tale of resilience and fragility, of a city that rose to dazzling heights only to fall twice, first to the ambitions of empire, then to the ravages of conflict. But perhaps its greatest lesson lies in its enduring spirit, a beacon for those who believe that the past must never be forgotten. Next, we'll journey to the icy shores of Greenland, where the Vikings built and then abandoned their farthest frontier. Leaving behind the sun-scorched ruins of Palmyra, we now venture into the frigid landscapes of Greenland, where the Vikings carved out a life against impossible odds. Far from their Scandinavian homelands, Norse settlers arrived here around the year 980, drawn by tales of fertile land and new opportunities. Led by the fiery explorer Eric the Red, they established 2 main colonies, the eastern and western settlements, transforming this icy frontier into a thriving outpost of medieval Europe. For centuries, these communities clung to the edge of the known world. They built sturdy longhouses, raised livestock, and even exported walrus ivory and furs back to mainland Europe. But Greenland's Norse settlers faced challenges unlike anything they'd known before. The climate, already harsh, grew even colder during the Little Ice Age, shortening growing seasons and freezing vital trade routes. Crops failed, and the once reliable hunting grounds became unpredictable. Isolation made matters worse. As sea ice thickened, ships from Norway and Iceland arrived less frequently, cutting off supplies and contact with the outside world. The settlers, stubbornly loyal to their European ways, refused to adopt the survival strategies of the local Inuit, who thrived in these conditions. While the Inuit hunted seals and adapted to the changing environment, the Norse clung to their cattle and grain, a decision that may have sealed their fate. By the mid-15th century, the colonies were silent. The last written record of the Norse in Greenland comes from a wedding held in the year 1408. After that, nothing. Archaeological evidence suggests a slow, grim decline rather than a single catastrophic event. Starvation, conflict, or even a desperate exodus back to Europe could explain their disappearance. So why did the Vikings vanish from Greenland? The answer lies in a perfect storm of climate change, resource scarcity, and cultural inflexibility. Their story serves as a haunting reminder of how even the hardiest societies can falter when nature and tradition collide. Next, we'll step into the shadow of the mighty ziggurats of Babylon, a city whose downfall was written not in ice, but in shifting empires and environmental decay. Now, let's journey from the frozen silence of Greenland to the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, where the legendary city of Babylon once stood as a beacon of power and innovation. At its height, Babylon was the jewel of the ancient world, a sprawling metropolis of towering ziggurats, bustling markets, and the famed Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders. But even this mighty city couldn't escape the tides of time. Babylon's decline began under Persian rule in the 6th century BCE. Though the Persians initially allowed the city to retain its cultural prestige, heavy taxes and shifting political priorities slowly drained its wealth. The once great capital became just another province in a vast empire, its influence waning as power shifted to Persepolis and other Persian strongholds. But politics alone didn't doom Babylon. Environmental decay played a silent, relentless role. Centuries of intensive farming and irrigation had salted the soil, turning fertile fields barren. The Euphrates River, the lifeblood of the city, began to shift its course, leaving canals dry and agriculture crippled. By the time Alexander the Great arrived in the 4th century BC, Babylon was already a shadow of its former self, a city more revered in memory than in reality. What finally sealed Babylon's fate? A combination of neglect and nature. As Persian interest faded, maintenance of its grand infrastructure lapsed, temples crumbled, and the once mighty walls eroded. By the medieval era, the city was little more than a mound of rubble, its glory buried under layers of dust and time. Babylon's story is a stark lesson in how even the greatest civilizations can falter when empires change hands and the land itself turns against them. Next, we'll travel to the arid coast of Peru, where the Moche city of Huaca del Sol faced a different kind of catastrophe, one written in the fury of El Niño and the chaos of war. Leaving the faded grandeur of Babylon behind, we now turn to the windswept deserts of Peru, where the Moche people built their towering adobe city of Huaca del Sol. This was no ordinary settlement. It was the heart of a sophisticated culture, a place where rulers commanded vast resources to construct one of the largest pyramids in the ancient Americas. But like so many others, Huaca del Sol's story ends in mystery and ruin. The Moche thrived for centuries, mastering irrigation to farm arid lands and creating stunning art that depicted their gods, warriors, and rituals. Yet around the 7th century, their world began to unravel. The first blow came from the skies, or rather, the ocean. El Niño, the periodic climate phenomenon, unleashed devastating floods along Peru's coast. Canals were destroyed, fields drowned, and the delicate balance of Moche agriculture collapsed. Famine likely followed, weakening the society from within. But nature wasn't the only force at work. Archaeological evidence hints at growing unrest. Fortifications built in haste, burned buildings, and mass graves. Some scholars believe internal rebellion or invasion fractured the Moche's political order. Others point to a grim ritual site where sacrifices spiked during this period, suggesting desperate attempts to appease the gods. Whatever the trigger, the result was the same. Huaca del Sol was abandoned, its halls left to crumble under the relentless sun. What makes this collapse so haunting is its suddenness. Unlike Babylon's slow decline, the Moche's fall seems abrupt, as if a thriving civilization vanished overnight. Yet traces remain: their art, their pyramids, and the lingering question of how climate and conflict conspired to erase a people. Next, we'll venture to the heart of Assyria, where the mighty city of Nineveh faced its own catastrophic end, not from nature's whims but from the swords of its enemies. Now we journey from the ruins of Huaca del Sol to the once mighty walls of Nineveh, the glittering capital of the Assyrian Empire. This was a city that inspired both awe and terror, its palaces adorned with colossal winged bulls, its libraries holding the knowledge of Mesopotamia, and its armies feared across the ancient world. But Nineveh's dominance would not last. Unlike the Moche, whose collapse was tied to nature's fury, Nineveh's downfall came at the hands of its enemies, and history would remember it as an act of divine justice. By the 7th century before the Common Era, Assyria's grip on its empire was slipping. Revolts erupted in conquered territories, and former vassals saw weakness in the once invincible superpower. The final blow came in 612 before the Common Era, when an unlikely alliance of Medes and Babylonians laid siege to Nineveh. The city's massive defenses, designed to withstand years of attack, fell in just 3 months. Ancient texts describe streets running red with blood, palaces set ablaze, and the Assyrian king's desperate last stand. What makes Nineveh's destruction so striking is how it was framed, not just as a military defeat but as cosmic retribution. The Babylonians, long oppressed by Assyria, saw their victory as the gods punishing Nineveh for its cruelty. Even the Hebrew Bible echoes this, with the prophet Nahum proclaiming Nineveh's fall as divine justice for its violence. Modern archaeology confirms the brutality of the siege, but also reveals a twist. Some Assyrians may have survived, melting into the population while their capital became a cautionary tale about the limits of power. Nineveh's ruins, buried for centuries, now whisper of a lesson as old as civilization itself, that no empire, no matter how fearsome, is invincible. Next, we'll cross the Pacific to a far smaller but equally enigmatic collapse, the Society of Easter Island, where towering stone faces stand as silent witnesses to a vanished world. Leaving behind the ashes of Nineveh, we now set our sights on a remote island in the vast Pacific, where an entirely different kind of mystery unfolds. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as it's known to its Polynesian descendants, is famous for its towering stone moai, those enigmatic statues that stare inland with solemn expressions. But behind these silent giants lies a story of ecological disaster and societal collapse, one that serves as a stark warning about the consequences of unchecked resource depletion. When Polynesian settlers first arrived on Easter Island around the 12th century, they found a lush paradise. Thick forests of palm trees covered the land, providing wood for canoes, tools, and the ropes and rollers needed to transport their massive stone statues. For centuries, the Rapa Nui thrived, carving and erecting nearly 900 moai as symbols of ancestral power. But as the population grew, so did the demand for resources. Trees were cut down faster than they could regrow, and by the 17th century, the island was stripped bare. Without trees, the ecosystem unraveled. Soil erosion made farming difficult, and without timber, the islanders could no longer build fishing canoes, forcing them to rely on dwindling land resources. Hunger and conflict followed, with evidence of clan warfare and even cannibalism emerging in the archaeological record. The very statues that once symbolized unity became targets of violence, toppled by rival groups in a desperate scramble for survival. What makes Easter Island's collapse so haunting is its isolation. Unlike Nineveh or other vanished cities, the Rapa Nui had nowhere to turn when their environment failed. Some researchers argue that European contact and slave raids in the 18th century delivered the final blow, but the heart of the tragedy lies in that earlier ecological tipping point. Today, the island stands as a microcosm of a global dilemma: how societies balance growth with sustainability. From the silent moai to the barren hills, Easter Island's story challenges us to ask, when a civilization consumes its own future, who is left to remember it? Next, we'll travel to the Aegean, where another catastrophic event, this time a volcanic eruption, wiped an entire city off the map, leaving behind only whispers of a legend that endures to this day. Now, let's journey from the silent warnings of Easter Island to the fiery ruins of the Aegean, where one of history's most devastating volcanic eruptions reshaped both land and legend. The ancient city of Thera, a thriving Minoan settlement on what is now the island of Santorini, met its end in a cataclysm so immense it may have inspired the myth of Atlantis itself. Around the year 1600 before the Common Era, Thera was a bustling hub of trade and culture, its whitewashed buildings adorned with vibrant frescoes overlooking the sparkling Mediterranean. The Minoans, master seafarers and artisans, had built a society of remarkable sophistication here, but beneath their feet, the island's volcanic heart was stirring. When Thera finally erupted, it did so with a force estimated to be 4 times more powerful than the infamous Krakatoa explosion of 1883. The eruption sent towering tsunamis crashing across the Aegean, devastating nearby Crete and likely crippling the Minoan civilization. Thera itself was buried under layers of ash and pumice, its streets and palaces preserved like a snapshot of doom. Archaeologists later uncovered haunting remnants, a fresco of a fisherman, his catch still clutched in his hands, frozen in time. The scale of destruction was so unimaginable that scholars speculate it may have seeded Plato's tale of Atlantis, a once great civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Yet Thera's legacy isn't just one of ruin. The volcanic ash enriched the soil, and over centuries new life took root on the island. Today, Santorini's cliffs, draped in white and blue, attract travelers eager to glimpse the caldera where Thera once stood. Its story serves as a reminder of nature's dual power to destroy, but also to renew. From the ashes of Thera, we turn next to another civilization that vanished under mysterious circumstances, this time in the highlands of South America, where the Tiwanaku people left behind stone monuments as enigmatic as the moai of Easter Island. Leaving behind the smoldering ruins of Thera, we now venture across the ocean to the windswept highlands of South America, where the Tiwanaku civilization once thrived in a landscape that seems almost otherworldly. Nestled near the shores of Lake Titicaca at an altitude of over 12,000 feet, this ancient city was a marvel of engineering and culture until it, too, vanished into the mists of time. The Tiwanaku people flourished between the years 500 and 1000 of the Common Era, constructing monumental stone temples and intricate irrigation systems that defied the harsh Andean environment. Their city was a spiritual and political hub, drawing pilgrims and traders from across the region. Yet by the 12th century, Tiwanaku lay abandoned, its grand structures silent. What could have driven its people away? One compelling theory points to climate change. Tree rings and sediment cores reveal that a prolonged drought gripped the region, crippling the agriculture that sustained Tiwanaku's population. Without reliable harvests, the city's intricate water management systems became useless, and famine may have sparked a desperate exodus. Others suggest internal strife, evidence of burned buildings and hastily abandoned workshops hints at political upheaval or invasion. But perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the city's own legacy. The Tiwanaku's descendants, the Aymara people, speak of a time when their ancestors simply walked away, scattering into smaller communities. Today, the ruins of Tiwanaku stand as a testament to human ingenuity and fragility. Its carved stone gateways and enigmatic monoliths whisper of a civilization that mastered its environment, only to be undone by forces beyond its control. As we ponder Tiwanaku's fate, our next journey takes us to the sun-baked plains of the ancient Near East, where the walls of Jericho tell a story of destruction and rebirth across millennia. Now, shifting our gaze from the high Andes to the arid valleys of the ancient Near East, we arrive at Jericho, a city whose very name echoes through time as one of the oldest continuously inhabited places on Earth. But beneath its layers of history lies a story of repeated collapse and rebirth, a cycle as relentless as the desert winds. Jericho's origins stretch back over 10,000 years, with evidence of settlements dating to the dawn of agriculture. Its strategic location near freshwater springs made it a lifeline in the harsh Jordan Valley, attracting waves of conquerors and settlers. Yet time and again, Jericho's walls crumbled, sometimes by force, sometimes by nature's hand. The most famous tale of its downfall comes from the Bible, where the Israelite leader Joshua is said to have brought the city's walls tumbling with the blast of trumpets. While archaeologists debate the literal truth of this account, they've uncovered layers of destruction matching the biblical timeline, suggesting a catastrophic event around 1500 BC. But this was just one chapter in Jericho's saga. Earthquakes, invasions, and fires punctuate its history. The city was rebuilt at least 20 times, each iteration rising from the ashes of the last. One particularly devastating quake around 3100 BC left skeletons crushed beneath collapsed walls, a grim snapshot of sudden disaster. Later, the Romans reshaped Jericho into a lavish winter retreat, only for it to fade again under Byzantine rule. What makes Jericho extraordinary isn't just its resilience, it's the way each destruction became a catalyst for reinvention. From Neolithic towers to Herod's palaces, the city adapted, its survival a testament to humanity's stubborn refusal to yield. As we peel back its layers, Jericho challenges us to ponder, is destruction an end or merely a brutal kind of beginning? With this question lingering, our path now leads to the jungles of Cambodia, where the Khmer city of Koh Ker briefly blazed as a capital before vanishing into obscurity. Leaving behind the layered ruins of Jericho, we now journey deep into the heart of Cambodia, where the jungle conceals the enigmatic remains of Koh Ker. This once mighty Khmer capital rose to power in a flash of ambition, only to fade just as quickly, leaving behind a puzzle that still baffles historians today. Koh Ker's story begins in the 10th century, when the ambitious King Jayavarman IV abruptly moved the Khmer Empire's capital here from the grand city of Angkor. For just 2 decades, Koh Ker thrived as the center of a booming empire, its skyline dominated by the towering Prang Pyramid, a 7-tiered masterpiece that soared over the dense forest. Temples, reservoirs, and sprawling urban complexes sprang up almost overnight, a testament to the king's relentless drive. But what caused this sudden shift? Some scholars point to political strife. Jayavarman's reign was marked by rebellion, and Koh Ker may have been a strategic stronghold to consolidate his power. Others suggest religious motives. The king was a devotee of the fierce god Shiva, and Koh Ker's remote location may have been chosen for its spiritual significance. Whatever the reason, the city's glory was shockingly short-lived. When Jayavarman died, his successor swiftly moved the capital back to Angkor, abandoning Koh Ker to the encroaching wilderness. The reasons for this abrupt reversal remain unclear. Was it the logistical nightmare of sustaining a city in such a remote location, the allure of Angkor's established infrastructure? Or perhaps the political tide simply turned against Koh Ker's legacy? Today, the ruins whisper of a city frozen in time. Massive lingers, sacred stone pillars lie toppled in the undergrowth, and the Prang Pyramid stands eerily silent, its steps worn smooth by centuries of neglect. Unlike Angkor, which faded gradually, Koh Ker's decline was swift and absolute, a meteoric rise and fall that feels almost deliberate. As we piece together Koh Ker's fleeting moment in the spotlight, we're reminded that even the grandest cities can vanish in the blink of history's eye. Next, we'll venture to the rugged hills of Greece, where the mighty citadel of Mycenae met a fate just as dramatic. Now, let's turn our gaze to the sun-baked hills of Greece, where the legendary city of Mycenae once stood as a beacon of Bronze Age power. This fortress of kings, crowned by its iconic Lion Gate, didn't just fade away, it plummeted into chaos, becoming one of the most dramatic casualties of a collapsing era. Mycenae's story is woven into myth and history alike. At its peak, it was the heart of a warrior culture, its rulers immortalized in Homer's tales of Agamemnon and the Trojan War. The city's massive cyclopean walls, built with stones so large they seemed placed by giants, symbolized its might. Trade networks stretched from Egypt to the Baltic, and its artisans crafted gold death masks and intricate pottery that still dazzle us today. Yet by the end of the 12th century BC, Mycenae lay in ruins. What triggered its fall? The answer lies in a perfect storm of disasters. Climate records reveal a prolonged drought that crippled agriculture, while earthquakes shattered its formidable walls. Then came the Sea Peoples, mysterious raiders who ravaged coastal cities, disrupting trade and spreading terror. But perhaps the deadliest blow came from within. Evidence suggests violent uprisings as starving citizens turned on the ruling elite. The collapse wasn't isolated. Mycenae was just one domino in the wider Bronze Age downfall, a catastrophe that erased palaces, writing systems, and entire civilizations across the Mediterranean. Some scholars argue that rigid hierarchies made these societies brittle. When crisis hit, they had no flexibility to adapt. Others point to a systems collapse, where interconnected trade networks unraveled like a snapped thread. Today, Mycenae's ruins brood over the Argolid Plain, a stark reminder that even the mightiest can fall. Its story forces us to ask, could such a collapse happen again? As we ponder that, our next stop takes us to the highlands of Mexico, where the Zapotec city of Monte Albán faced its own enigmatic end. Leaving the crumbling walls of Mycenae behind, we journey across the Atlantic to the misty highlands of southern Mexico, where the Zapotec city of Monte Albán once thrived atop an artificially flattened mountain. This sprawling metropolis, with its grand plazas and intricate stone carvings, dominated the Oaxaca Valley for over 1,000 years, only to be mysteriously abandoned by the 9th century CE. What caused its downfall? The answer may lie in the very landscape that made it powerful. Monte Albán was a marvel of engineering and ambition. Founded around 500 BC, it grew into a political and religious hub, its terraced hillsides housing temples, ball courts, and observatories aligned with celestial events. The Zapotec developed one of Mesoamerica's earliest writing systems, leaving behind cryptic glyphs that hint at their sophisticated governance. Yet by the time Spanish conquistadors arrived, the city was already a ghost town, its empty corridors whispering of a forgotten glory. Archaeologists point to two likely culprits for its abandonment. First, warfare. Carvings depict captured rivals, suggesting escalating conflicts with neighboring cities like Teotihuacan. As alliances fractured, Monte Albán's influence waned, but just as critical was resource depletion. The city's hillsides, once lush with forests, show signs of severe erosion, a testament to overfarming and deforestation. With depleted soils and dwindling water, the population may have scattered to more fertile lands. Yet Monte Albán's legacy endured. Descendants of the Zapotec still live in nearby villages, preserving fragments of their ancestors' language and traditions. The city's ruins, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, challenge us to consider how even the most resilient societies can be undone by environmental strain and shifting power. As we unravel this mystery, our path leads next to the shifting sands of Egypt, where the ancient capital of Memphis slowly faded into obscurity. Now, let's turn our gaze to the banks of the Nile, where the once mighty city of Memphis stood as the beating heart of ancient Egypt. For over 3,000 years, this legendary capital served as the political and cultural epicenter of a civilization that shaped history. Yet, like so many great cities, its glory eventually dimmed, not by sudden catastrophe, but by the slow march of time and shifting tides of power. Memphis was founded around 3100 BC, strategically positioned where Upper and Lower Egypt met. It thrived as the seat of pharaohs, home to towering temples and bustling markets, and the gateway to the pyramids of Giza. The city's patron god, Ptah, symbolized creation itself, reflecting Memphis's central role in Egypt's identity. But by the first millennium BC, its influence began to wane as new capitals like Thebes and later Alexandria rose to prominence. The reasons for its decline were as much practical as they were political. As Egypt's rulers shifted their courts south to Thebes or north to the Mediterranean coast, Memphis lost its status as the administrative hub. Trade routes evolved, favoring cities with better access to emerging markets. Even its religious significance faded as newer cults gained favor. Yet Memphis never vanished entirely. It lingered as a regional center, its grand structures slowly reclaimed by the Nile's silt and shifting sands. By the time of the Arab conquest in the 7th century CE, Memphis was a shadow of its former self. Today, its ruins lie scattered near modern-day Cairo, a testament to how even the most enduring cities can be eclipsed by change. But as we'll soon see, this pattern of rise and fall repeats itself across continents next. We'll venture to the arid landscapes of North America, where the ancestral Puebloans of Choco Canyon faced their own enigmatic collapse. Now let's journey across the ocean to the sun-baked deserts of the American Southwest, where the ancestral Puebloans built one of the most sophisticated societies of their time, Choco Canyon. Nestled in what's now New Mexico, This sprawling complex of towering stone structures and intricate road systems thrived for centuries before its people vanished, leaving behind a puzzle that still baffles archaeologists today. Choco Canyon's golden age stretched from around 850 to 1150 CE, a time when its great houses like Pueblo Bonito rose several stories high with hundreds of rooms. These weren't just homes, they were ceremonial centers, trading hubs, and astronomical observatories, aligned with precision to track solstices and lunar cycles. The canyon was the heart of a vast network, connected by straight roads that stretched for miles, suggesting a highly organized society with influence far beyond its walls. Yet by the 1200s, Choco was abandoned. The question is why. One leading theory points to climate. Tree rings tell a story of prolonged drought, a 50-year dry spell that would have crippled agriculture in an already arid landscape. Without enough water to grow crops like maize, the social fabric may have unraveled, trade collapsed, ceremonies lost their meaning, and people dispersed in search of survival. But drought alone might not explain everything. Some researchers argue that social upheaval played a role. Evidence of burned structures and defensive walls hints at conflict, possibly fueled by resource scarcity or shifting power dynamics. Others suggest that the very complexity of Choco's society sowed the seeds of its decline: overpopulation, strained resources, or a rigid hierarchy that couldn't adapt when crisis hit. Whatever the cause, the ancestral Puebloans didn't disappear entirely. They migrated, their descendants becoming the Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples who carry forward their traditions. Choco's empty ruins stand as a haunting reminder of how even the most advanced civilizations can falter when nature and human ambition collide. And as we'll see next, this theme echoes again in the storied streets of Tyre, a coastal powerhouse whose downfall came not from the desert but from the sea. Turning our gaze from the desert to the sea, we arrive at the legendary city of Tyre, a maritime superpower whose fate was sealed by one of history's most formidable conquerors. Perched on the coast of modern-day Lebanon, Tyre was no ordinary city. It was an island fortress, a hub of purple dye trade, and a symbol of Phoenician ingenuity. Its towering walls and bustling harbors made it seem invincible, until Alexander the Great set his sights on it in 332 BCE. What followed was one of the most audacious sieges of the ancient world. Unable to storm the island directly, Alexander ordered his soldiers to build a massive causeway, literally moving mountains to reach Tyre's walls. For 7 grueling months, the Macedonians battled the defiant Tyrians, who hurled everything from flaming arrows to barrels of scorching sand to repel the invaders. But Alexander's persistence paid off. His forces finally breached the defenses, slaughtering thousands and selling survivors into slavery. The once glorious city was reduced to rubble, its name etched into history as a testament to both its resilience and its tragic fall. Yet Tyre's story didn't end there. Rebuilt under Greek and later Roman rule, it regained some of its former splendor as a trading center, but it never recaptured its earlier dominance. The very geography that once protected it, its island location, became a liability as shifting trade routes favored mainland ports. Earthquakes and rising sea levels chipped away at its remnants, and by the medieval period, Tyre was a shadow of its former self. Today, its ruins whisper of a city that dared to defy an empire, a reminder that even the mightiest can be humbled by the tides of time. And as we'll soon discover, this pattern of rise and fall takes a darker turn in the next chapter of our journey, where we uncover the fate of Nimrud, a city whose destruction was not just historical but tragically modern. Shifting our focus from the ruins of Tyre, we journey now to the sun-drenched shores of the Aegean, where the Minoan city of Akrotiri lies frozen in time. Buried under layers of volcanic ash nearly 3,600 years ago, this thriving Bronze Age settlement offers an extraordinary snapshot of life before catastrophe struck. Unlike Pompeii, Akrotiri's story isn't one of sudden annihilation, it's a haunting mystery of foresight and escape. The city's preservation is nothing short of miraculous. When the nearby volcano on Thera, modern-day Santorini, erupted with unimaginable force, it didn't just bury Akrotiri, it sealed it like a time capsule. The ash that smothered the city protected its vivid frescoes, multi-story buildings, and even everyday objects like pottery and furniture, leaving archaeologists with an unparalleled window into Minoan culture. But here's the twist: no human remains have been found in Akrotiri. This absence has fueled decades of debate. Did the Minoans, renowned for their seafaring skills, detect the volcano's warning signs, earthquakes, gas emissions, and flee in time? Or did the eruption catch them off guard, with their bodies lost to the sea or later eruptions? Some theories suggest the city was already abandoned before the final cataclysm, possibly due to earlier seismic activity. Others point to the lack of precious artifacts left behind, hinting at a deliberate evacuation. Could Akrotiri's fate have inspired Plato's tale of Atlantis, a sophisticated civilization swallowed by the sea? The parallels are tantalizing. What's certain is that Akrotiri's silence speaks volumes: a city preserved yet empty, a triumph of survival or a tragedy deferred. As we peel back the layers of ash and speculation, we're reminded that some vanishings leave not just ruins but riddles. And with that, we turn to another city whose echoes of the past collide violently with the present: Nimrud, where destruction wasn't just an act of nature but of human hands. Now, let's travel even further back in time to the cradle of civilization itself, the ancient city of Uruk. Once the beating heart of Sumerian culture and a powerhouse of innovation, Uruk's decline mirrors the fading glory of an empire that laid the foundations for modern society. At its peak, this city was a marvel of the ancient world, home to towering ziggurats, bustling markets, and the earliest known system of writing cuneiform. But as Sumer's influence waned, so too did Uruk's dominance, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in both triumph and mystery. The fall of Uruk wasn't sudden or dramatic like a volcanic eruption or invasion. Instead, it was a slow unraveling tied to the broader decline of Sumerian power. By around 2300 BC, competing city-states and external pressures began to chip away at Uruk's supremacy. The rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon the Great marked a turning point, as political and cultural shifts redirected power away from Sumer's traditional centers. Uruk, once a political and religious hub, gradually lost its prominence, though it never vanished entirely. It lingered as a shadow of its former self, its grand temples and palaces repurposed or reclaimed by time. What makes Uruk's story so compelling is its role as a microcosm of Sumer's fate. Environmental challenges like shifting river courses and soil salinity from intensive agriculture likely weakened the city's economic backbone. Meanwhile, waves of migrations and conflicts introduced new rulers and cultures, further diluting Uruk's Sumerian identity. Yet, even in decline, Uruk's innovations endured. Its writing system, legal codes, and urban planning influenced countless civilizations that followed. So, was Uruk's decline a failure or simply an evolution? Unlike cities wiped out by disaster, Uruk faded gradually, its legacy absorbed into the fabric of history. And as we move forward, we'll see how another ancient powerhouse met a far more violent end: the Assyrian city of Nimrud, where human hands, not time, brought about its destruction. Now, shifting our gaze across the Atlantic, we arrive at the enigmatic city of Moundville, a once thriving hub of the Mississippian culture in what is now Alabama. Unlike the slow fade of Uruk, Moundville's abandonment presents a puzzle tied closely to the land itself. At its height between 1100 and 1400 CE, this city was a sprawling network of earthen mounds, plazas, and wooden palisades, home to thousands of people. Yet, by the time European settlers arrived, it was already a ghost town. its grand mounds silent witnesses to a vanished way of life. Theories about Moundville's decline often point to environmental stress as a key factor. The Mississippians relied heavily on maize agriculture, and evidence suggests that prolonged droughts or soil exhaustion may have strained their resources. Imagine a society where crop failures ripple through every aspect of life, trade dwindles, social hierarchies weaken, and people disperse in search of sustenance. Some archaeologists also propose that overhunting and deforestation disrupted local ecosystems, compounding the challenges. Unlike cities destroyed by invaders or disasters, Moundville's end seems to have been a quiet unraveling, a gradual retreat from grandeur. Yet there's more to the story. While environmental pressures likely played a role, they don't fully explain why such a sophisticated society didn't adapt or rebound. Recent research hints at possible social upheaval, internal conflicts, or shifts in religious power that may have accelerated the decline. The city's largest mounds, once centers of ceremony and authority, show signs of deliberate abandonment, as if the people themselves chose to walk away from their spiritual heart. Moundville's legacy endures not in ruins but in questions. Was it a cautionary tale of ecological mismanagement, or did its people simply move on, carrying their traditions elsewhere? As we turn next to the ancient city of Susa, we'll see how another civilization faced destruction, not by nature's hand, but by the swords of invaders. Leaving behind the quiet mystery of Moundville, we journey now to the ancient city of Susa, a place where conquest and resilience shaped its fate. Nestled in what is now southwestern Iran, Susa was no ordinary city. It was a jewel of the Elamite civilization, a bustling hub of trade and culture for thousands of years. But its story took a dramatic turn when the Assyrians, one of history's most formidable empires, set their sights on it. In the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal launched a brutal campaign against Susa, determined to crush Elamite resistance. The city was sacked, its temples burned, and its people scattered. Ancient records boast of the Assyrians sowing salt in the earth, a symbolic gesture meant to ensure Susa would never rise again. Yet, against all odds, it did. What makes Susa remarkable isn't just its destruction but its rebirth. Under Persian rule, particularly during the Achaemenid Empire, Susa was revived as a royal capital. Kings like Darius the Great built grand palaces here, blending Elamite, Mesopotamian, and Persian influences into a dazzling new identity. The city became a crossroads of empires, a testament to humanity's ability to rebuild. But Susa's revival wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was a cultural phoenix. The famous Code of Hammurabi, discovered here in the early 20th century, hints at its role as a guardian of ancient knowledge. Even after later conquests by Alexander the Great and the Parthians, Susa endured, adapting to each new era. So why does Susa's story matter? Unlike cities lost to time or nature, its cycles of destruction and renewal remind us that civilizations aren't always defined by their fall. Sometimes they're defined by what rises from the ashes. Next, we'll explore another city that faced a similar fate, but with a twist, the Harappan port of Lothal, where the sea itself may have sealed its destiny. Now, let's set sail for the ancient Harappan city of Lothal, a marvel of engineering and trade that met a watery fate. Located in modern-day Gujarat, India, Lothal was one of the southernmost outposts of the Indus Valley civilization, thriving around 4,000 years ago. What made this city extraordinary wasn't just its prosperity. It was its ingenious dockyard, the world's earliest known, connecting it to a vast network of maritime trade. But Lothal's success may have also been its undoing. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of catastrophic flooding, with layers of silt suggesting the city was submerged more than once. Some theories point to a shifting river course or a massive tidal wave, possibly triggered by an earthquake. Imagine a bustling port, its streets and workshops suddenly swallowed by water, a disaster that would have crippled trade and forced its people to abandon their homes. Yet, flooding might not be the only culprit. Lothal's decline coincides with the broader collapse of the Indus Valley civilization, hinting at larger systemic failures. Trade routes faltered, resources grew scarce, and the intricate urban planning that once defined Harappan cities began to unravel. Could Lothal have been a victim of both nature and a crumbling economic network? What's haunting is how much of Lothal's story remains beneath the surface literally. Excavations reveal a city frozen in time, with seals, beads, and tools left behind as if its residents expected to return. But they never did. Next, we'll journey to the ancient city of Byblos, where empires rose and fell like tides, leaving behind layers of history waiting to be uncovered. Now, let's turn our attention to the ancient city of Byblos, a place where history didn't just unfold, it repeated itself. Nestled along the Mediterranean coast in modern-day Lebanon, Byblos is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, with a story that stretches back over 7,000 years. What makes Byblos fascinating isn't just its age, but its remarkable ability to rise, fall, and rise again under the rule of empire after empire. Byblos began as a humble fishing village, but its strategic location and rich cedar forests soon made it a prized possession. The Egyptians were the first to covet it, importing its timber for shipbuilding and papyrus for writing. So much so that the Greek word for book, Byblos, likely comes from the city's name. For centuries, Byblos thrived as a vital trade hub, only to face decline when Egyptian influence waned. But this wasn't the end, just the first chapter in a cycle of rebirth and ruin. Next came the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, each leaving their mark before fading into history. The Persians fortified it, the Greeks revitalized it, and the Romans transformed it into a bustling metropolis. Yet with every new ruler came new vulnerabilities. Natural disasters, shifting trade routes, and the relentless march of conquest chipped away at Byblos's glory, only for it to reinvent itself once more. What's striking is how Byblos mirrors the ebb and flow of civilization itself, a testament to human resilience and the fragility of power. Even today, its layered ruins whisper tales of empires long gone, each buried beneath the next. Up next, we'll uncover the turbulent fate of the Toltec city of Chala, where legend and reality collide in a story of ambition and downfall. Now, shifting our gaze to the heart of Mesoamerica, we arrive at the Toltec city of Chala, a place where myth and history blur into one. Rising to power around the 9th century, Chala was more than just a city. It was a symbol of Toltec dominance, a center of art, architecture, and military might. But like so many great cities before it, Chala's story is one of dramatic rise and sudden fall. At its peak, Chala was a marvel. Its grand pyramids, like the Temple of Quetzalcoatl adorned with towering warrior columns, showcased the Toltecs' engineering prowess. The city thrived as a hub of trade and culture, influencing later civilizations like the Aztecs, who revered the Toltecs as legendary ancestors. Yet beneath this glittering surface, trouble brewed. Theories about Chala's collapse point to internal strife, a society torn apart by power struggles or religious conflicts. Some scholars suggest that rival factions within the city's elite clashed, weakening its unity. Others argue that external invasions, possibly by nomadic Chichimec groups, delivered the final blow. Whatever the cause, by the 12th century, Chala was abandoned, its grand structures left to the elements. What's haunting is how quickly a city of such influence could vanish. The Aztecs later romanticized Chala as a lost golden age, but its ruins tell a quieter tale, one of ambition, division, and the fragile nature of power. Next, we'll journey to the ancient city of Sippar, where the shifting tides of Mesopotamian politics sealed its fate. Turning our attention to the sands of Mesopotamia, we uncover the story of Sippar, a city whose fate was tied to the ebb and flow of empires. Once a thriving center of trade and worship, Sippar stood as a testament to Sumerian ingenuity, home to the sun god Shamash and a repository of ancient knowledge. But as political winds shifted, this once great city faded into obscurity. Sippar's prominence came from its strategic location along the Euphrates River, making it a hub for commerce and culture. Its temples and libraries held thousands of clay tablets preserving laws, astronomy, and literature. Yet, as Babylonian influence grew and power centralized elsewhere, Sippar's importance dwindled. The rise of new capitals like Babylon and later Persian dominance left Sippar on the periphery, its resources and people gradually drawn away. Some historians point to environmental factors, shifting river courses or soil exhaustion, as contributing to its decline. Others argue that Sippar's downfall was purely political, a casualty of larger imperial ambitions. By the time of the Persian conquests, the city was a shadow of its former self, its grand temples crumbling and its streets quiet. What makes Sippar's story compelling is how it mirrors the fate of so many ancient cities once vital, then forgotten. Its legacy lives on in the fragments of tablets and the echoes of its gods, a reminder of how even the mightiest can be reshaped by time. Next, we'll delve into the mysteries of the Caral-Supe civilization, one of the oldest societies in the Americas. Now, let's journey across the ocean to the arid coast of Peru, where the Caral-Supe civilization once thrived over 5,000 years ago. This remarkable society, often called the cradle of Andean culture, predates even the pyramids of Egypt, yet its disappearance remains one of history's quietest mysteries. Caral-Supe was a marvel of early urban planning with massive stone pyramids, sunken plazas, and intricate irrigation systems that turned desert into fertile land. Its people traded with distant regions, crafted sophisticated textiles, and even developed a form of quipu, a knotted string recording system. But around 4,000 years ago, this bustling hub fell silent. What caused such an advanced society to vanish? Some researchers point to climate change, as shifting weather patterns may have dried up vital water sources. Others suggest seismic activity, given Peru's volatile geology, could have disrupted their infrastructure. There's also the possibility of social upheaval, perhaps internal conflict, or the collapse of trade networks left Caral-Supe vulnerable. Unlike other ancient cities, Caral-Supe didn't leave behind signs of violent destruction. Instead, it seems the people simply walked away, their buildings left to the sands. This absence of chaos makes their disappearance all the more puzzling. Were they forced out by environmental pressures, or did they gradually disperse, adapting to new ways of life? The legacy of Caral-Supe endures in the ruins that still stand, whispering of a time when innovation flourished in the Americas long before many other civilizations rose. Next, we'll explore the fading echoes of Eridu, a city whose decline marked the end of an era in ancient Mesopotamia. Shifting our gaze to the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, we arrive at Eridu, once revered as the oldest city in Sumerian tradition. This sacred site, believed to be the home of the god Enki, stood as a spiritual epicenter for millennia until its influence began to wane, leaving behind a mystery wrapped in shifting beliefs. Eridu wasn't just a city, it was a pilgrimage site where towering ziggurats reached for the heavens and priests performed rituals to appease the gods. Its foundation myth claimed it was the first city created by the deities, a place where civilization itself began. Yet, as newer cities like and Yorok rose to prominence, Eridu's religious significance slowly dimmed. Why did this holy city fade into obscurity? One theory points to the changing tides of faith. As Sumerian culture evolved, the worship of Enki lost its central role, overshadowed by other deities like Enlil of Nippur. Without its spiritual pull, Eridu's temples saw fewer pilgrims and its economy dwindled. Another factor was environmental. The Euphrates River, vital for trade and agriculture, gradually shifted its course, leaving Eridu stranded in a drying landscape. Unlike cities destroyed by war or disaster, Eridu's decline was quiet, almost deliberate. Excavations reveal no layers of ash or shattered walls, just abandoned shrines and silent streets. Was it a slow exodus as people followed the river and the new centers of power elsewhere, or did the very myths that birthed Eridu contribute to its downfall as newer tales rewrote Sumeria's spiritual map? The ruins of Eridu now lie like a forgotten hymn, a testament to how even the most sacred places can vanish when beliefs change. Next, we'll step into the ornate halls of Mitla, where Zapotec ingenuity met an equally enigmatic end. Leaving the silent sands of Eridu behind, we journey now to the vibrant highlands of Oaxaca, where the Zapotec city of Mitla once stood as a masterpiece of Mesoamerican artistry. Unlike other ancient cities that fell to conquest or catastrophe, Mitla's story is one of puzzling decline amid enduring beauty, a place where intricate mosaics and towering columns outlasted the people who built them. Mitla was no ordinary city. Known as the Place of the Dead, it served as the Zapotec civilization's spiritual heart, a labyrinth of palaces and temples adorned with geometric designs so precise they seemed otherworldly. The city's walls, fitted together without mortar, showcased engineering so advanced that even Spanish colonizers later repurposed its stones for their own churches, awestruck by its craftsmanship. Yet by the time the Spanish arrived, Mitla was already a shadow of its former self. What caused this architectural marvel to empty? One clue lies in the shifting political landscape. As Zapotec power waned under pressure from the rising Mixtec civilization, Mitla's role as a ceremonial hub may have dwindled. Another theory points to drought. Tree rings from the region reveal severe dry spells that could have destabilized agriculture, forcing populations to migrate. But here's the twist: Mitla's buildings show no signs of violent destruction. Instead, the city appears to have been carefully maintained, then quietly left behind. Some scholars suggest its very sacredness sealed its fate. As Zapotec beliefs evolved or merged with neighboring cultures, the rituals that sustained Mitla may have faded into memory. Today, its mosaics still gleam under the Mexican sun, a silent puzzle waiting to be solved. Next, we'll witness the fiery downfall of Ashur, a city whose end was anything but quiet. From the quiet abandonment of Mitla, we now turn to a city whose end came not with a whisper, but with a roar, the ancient Assyrian capital of Ashur. Unlike the gradual fade of other civilizations, Ashur's downfall was swift, brutal, and etched into history by the hands of its conquerors. This was no ordinary city. For centuries, Ashur stood as the beating heart of the Assyrian Empire, a fortress of power and piety where kings ruled and gods were worshipped in towering ziggurats. Its strategic location on the Tigris River made it a hub of trade and military might, feared by neighbors and revered by its people. Yet by the year 614 before the Common Era, Ashur's fate was sealed. The Babylonians and Medes, long oppressed by Assyrian rule, joined forces in a rebellion that would rewrite the map. Their armies swept through the city like a storm, leaving temples shattered and palaces in flames. Historical records describe the sack of Ashur in grim detail. Statues of gods were smashed, treasures looted, and survivors dragged into exile. The vengeance was so complete that even the city's name became a warning about the dangers of imperial overreach. But here's what makes Ashur's story unique. Its destruction wasn't just about conquest, it marked the end of an era. The fall of Ashur was the first domino in the collapse of the entire Assyrian Empire, a superpower that had dominated the Near East for centuries. Some historians argue that the city's rigid reliance on military dominance sowed the seeds of its own ruin, leaving it vulnerable when enemies united. Others point to internal strife or even divine retribution, as later Babylonian texts claimed the gods had turned against Assyria's arrogance. Today, the ruins of Ashur still rise from the Iraqi desert, a stark monument to the fragility of power. Next, we'll uncover how another mighty city, Huaca de la Luna, met its end amid the shifting sands of time. Now, let's journey from the ashes of Ashur to the sun-baked ruins of another fallen civilization, the Moch city of Huaca de la Luna. Nestled in the arid valleys of northern Peru, this was no ordinary settlement. Huaca de la Luna, or the Temple of the Moon, stood as a sacred center of power, artistry, and ritual for the Moch people, a culture that thrived for centuries before vanishing under mysterious circumstances. Unlike the violent conquest that doomed ashore, the collapse of Huaca de la Luna is shrouded in environmental and social turmoil. The Moch were master engineers, crafting intricate irrigation systems to turn the desert into fertile farmland. Their temples were adorned with vivid murals depicting gods, warriors, and sacrificial ceremonies, proof of a society deeply tied to both Earth and cosmos. Yet by the year 800 of the Common Era, their grand city lay abandoned, its halls silent. What went wrong? Clues point to a perfect storm of disasters. The Moch faced relentless El Niño events, catastrophic floods that drowned their fields, followed by droughts that parched the land. Archaeologists have uncovered layers of sediment revealing these climate swings, which may have shattered the people's faith in their rulers and gods. Then came the unrest. Skeletons bearing brutal wounds suggest violent upheavals, perhaps rebellions against elites who failed to protect them. Some theories even propose that the Moch's own ritual sacrifices, meant to appease the gods, spiraled into chaos as desperation grew. But here's the haunting twist: Huaca de la Luna wasn't alone. Its fall mirrored the broader collapse of the Moch civilization, a network of cities that unraveled within decades. Unlike empires toppled by invaders, the Moch may have been undone by the very environment they mastered, a warning about the delicate balance between human ambition and nature's might. Today, the temple's faded murals still whisper their stories, leaving us to wonder, was their downfall inevitable, or could they have adapted in time? Next, we'll step into the shattered halls of Nimrud, a city whose fate was sealed not by nature, but by the hands of conquerors and modern-day destroyers. Now we turn our attention from the environmental collapse of Huaca de la Luna to a city whose destruction was far more deliberate, the ancient Assyrian capital of Nimrud. Once a glittering jewel of Mesopotamia, Nimrud's fate was sealed not by nature's wrath, but by the brutality of conquerors both ancient and modern. Founded in the 13th century before the Common Era, Nimrud rose to prominence under King Ashurnasirpal II, becoming the heart of the Assyrian Empire. Its palaces were adorned with towering Lamassu statues, winged bulls with human faces, and its walls gleamed with intricate reliefs depicting military triumphs and royal hunts. For centuries, Nimrud stood as a symbol of Assyrian power, a city built to inspire awe and fear. Yet its glory was not destined to last. The first blow came in 612 before the Common Era, when a coalition of Babylonians and Medes stormed the city, burning its grand structures and toppling its idols. The Assyrian Empire crumbled, and Nimrud faded into obscurity, buried beneath the sands for millennia. But its story took an even darker turn in our own time. In 2015, the extremist group ISIS targeted Nimrud, bulldozing its ruins, smashing artifacts with sledgehammers, and even filming their destruction as propaganda. Priceless history, carvings, statues, and temples was reduced to rubble in a matter of days. What makes Nimrud's tragedy so chilling is the duality of its demise. It fell first to the rage of ancient enemies, then to the nihilism of modern fanatics. Both acts sought to erase not just a city, but an entire cultural legacy. Archaeologists have since scrambled to salvage what remains, piecing together fragments of reliefs and statues, a race against time and indifference. Nimrud's ruins now stand as a stark reminder. While nature can bury cities, only humans choose to obliterate them. Next, we'll uncover the quieter disappearance of Rakhigarhi, a once thriving hub of the Indus Valley whose collapse holds mysteries of its own. But while Nimrud's fate was marked by violence, the story of Rakhigarhi whispers a different kind of mystery, one of slow unraveling rather than sudden ruin. Nestled in present-day India, Rakhigarhi was once a thriving hub of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. a sprawling metropolis that rivaled even the famed cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Yet unlike those sites, Rakhigar, his disappearance wasn't the result of a single catastrophic event. Instead, it faded gradually, leaving behind clues that archaeologists are still piecing together today. At its peak around 4,000 years ago, Rakhigar was a marvel of urban planning with wide streets, advanced drainage systems, and evidence of trade stretching as far as Mesopotamia. But by 1800 before the Common Era, the city was abandoned, its buildings crumbling into the earth. So what happened? The leading theory points to the broader collapse of the Indus Valley civilization, a decline likely triggered by a perfect storm of environmental and social pressures. Climate change may have played a starring role. Shifts in monsoon patterns could have dried up the Gagahakra River, the lifeblood of Rakhigar's agriculture. Without reliable water, crops failed, trade networks frayed, and the city's once bustling markets fell silent. Some researchers also point to signs of social upheaval, burials with unusual trauma, or evidence of hurried departures suggesting that internal strife or invasions may have accelerated the decline. Yet Rakhigar, his story isn't just one of loss. Recent excavations have uncovered startling finds, from intricate jewelry to seals inscribed with the Indus script, offering glimpses into the lives of its people. These discoveries hint at a society that didn't just vanish. It transformed, its inhabitants likely migrating to smaller settlements or blending into new cultures. The silence of Rakhigar speaks volumes about the fragility of even the greatest civilizations. Next, we'll journey to the Nabatean city of Hegra, where shifting trade routes rewrote the destiny of another ancient wonder. Turning our attention northward, the fall of Hattusa didn't just erase a capital, it rewrote the map of Anatolia. As the Hittite Empire's heart crumbled around 1200 before the Common Era, power vacuums erupted across the region, setting off a chain reaction that would shape civilizations for centuries. Unlike cities ravaged by natural disasters, Hattusa's demise was a slow unraveling, with invaders chipping away at its dominance until the once mighty fortress stood empty. The immediate aftermath was chaos. With Hattusa gone, the intricate network of vassal states and trade routes that relied on Hittite authority collapsed like dominoes. Neighboring powers, the Assyrians to the southeast, the Phrygians from the west, rushed to fill the void, carving up territories that the Hittites had held for generations. This scramble didn't just redraw borders, it sparked cultural transformations. The Phrygians, for instance, absorbed elements of Hittite art and governance, blending them into their own rising kingdom. Even the Assyrians, though hostile to the Hittites, adopted their advanced ironworking techniques, which would later fuel their own military expansions. But Hattusa's legacy wasn't just about what followed its fall. The city's influence lingered in unexpected ways. Its vast archives of cuneiform tablets, though abandoned, survived under layers of rubble. When archaeologists uncovered them millennia later, these clay records revealed everything from diplomatic treaties to religious rituals, offering a blueprint of Bronze Age diplomacy. The famous Treaty of Kadesh, the world's oldest surviving peace accord, struck between the Hittites and Egyptians, was preserved here, proving that even in ruin, Hattusa continued to teach us about conflict resolution. Perhaps most strikingly, the Hittite legal code rediscovered in these ruins showed a society ahead of its time. Laws governing land rights, marriage, and even worker protections echoed in later Anatolian cultures, suggesting that Hattusa's intellectual footprint outlasted its walls. As we'll see next, modern excavations at Tikal are uncovering equally surprising connections between past and present. Now, shifting our gaze to the dense jungles of Guatemala, modern archaeology is peeling back layers of mystery surrounding Tikal's abandonment. Recent excavations have uncovered startling evidence that challenges long-held assumptions about this Maya powerhouse. One groundbreaking discovery came in 2020, when researchers using advanced laser technology revealed an extensive network of hidden reservoirs and canals beneath the city. These findings suggest Tikal's engineers were battling severe water shortages long before the city's collapse, turning what was once thought to be a sudden catastrophe into a story of prolonged struggle. Even more revealing were the soil samples taken from the city's central plazas. Analysis showed traces of toxic algae blooms in ancient reservoirs, pointing to a grim scenario: contaminated drinking water during prolonged droughts. This environmental crisis likely triggered waves of disease and social unrest, fracturing Tikal's political stability. Meanwhile, tree ring data from the region confirms a series of devastating droughts between the 8th and 9th centuries, aligning perfectly with the city's decline. But perhaps the most poignant discoveries come from the ruins themselves. Archaeologists recently unearthed hastily dug mass graves near the temples, filled with skeletons showing signs of malnutrition and violence. Unlike the careful burials of Tikal's elite, these remains speak of desperation in the final days. Yet amid the turmoil, there's evidence of resilience. Carvings found in 2022 depict rulers attempting ambitious water conservation projects, a last-ditch effort to save their city. These modern insights paint Tikal's fall not as a single event, but as a cascade of environmental, political, and social pressures. As we'll see in our final segment, some vanished cities leave behind more than ruins. They spark legends that outlast empires. Turning from the hard evidence of Tikal's decline to the realm of pure legend, the story of Atlantis refuses to fade into obscurity. Unlike other vanished cities grounded in archaeology, Atlantis thrives in the imagination, reinvented endlessly across books, films, and even dubious theories. Plato's original account, written over 2,000 years ago, described an advanced civilization sinking beneath the waves in a single day, a cautionary tale about hubris. Yet today, Atlantis has outgrown its philosophical roots to become a pop culture phenomenon. Hollywood, in particular, can't resist Atlantis's allure. From Disney's animated adventure to blockbusters like Aquaman, filmmakers reimagine the city as everything from a high-tech utopia to a realm of magic. These versions often borrow loosely from Plato, blending his ideas with spectacular visuals and heroic quests. Even sci-fi franchises like Stargate and Doctor Who have woven Atlantis into their lore, treating it as a lost colony of alien ancestors. Beyond entertainment, Atlantis fuels pseudoscientific claims. Self-proclaimed experts insist they've pinpointed its location, near Antarctica, in the Sahara, or even off the coast of Cuba. These theories often rely on cherry-picked geological data or misinterpreted satellite images. Some conspiracy circles go further, alleging that Atlantis housed an ancient super-technology suppressed by modern governments. While archaeologists dismiss these ideas, they persist in documentaries and best-selling books, proving the myth's enduring grip. Perhaps most fascinating is how Atlantis adapts to each generation's anxieties. In the 1960s, it symbolized nuclear fears. Today, it's recast as a warning about climate change or AI. This chameleon-like quality ensures Atlantis never truly vanishes. It simply resurfaces in new forms. As we close our exploration of history's greatest disappearances, remember, some cities leave behind ruins while others leave legends that refuse to die. From the sunken ruins of Heracleion to the jungle-shrouded temples of Tikal, these 50 vanished cities whisper a haunting lesson: civilizations, no matter how mighty, are never permanent. What ties them together? Some fell to nature's fury: volcanoes, earthquakes, or rising seas. Others crumbled from within, buckling under war, famine, or lost faith. A few, like Atlantis, live on as cautionary tales, their truths blurred by time. Yet their disappearances aren't just ancient history. Modern cities face similar threats: climate change, resource scarcity, even pandemics. The echoes of Petra's abandoned trade routes or Cahokia's emptied mounds remind us, societies thrive only when they adapt. So what do you think caused these vanishings? Was it cosmic bad luck, human error, or something stranger? Drop your theories below. We'd love to hear them. And if these mysteries left you hungry for more, explore our deep dives into individual cities linked in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a journey into history's greatest enigmas. After all, the next lost city could be waiting beneath your feet.